from the News Channel 5 Network. This is OpenLine.
Well, good evening and welcome to OpenLine. I'm Chuck Long and glad to be here with you for the next hour. One of my favorite hours, and I know it's yours too. We are asking the expert tonight, Ask an Attorney, and of course, one of our all-time favorites, Kevin Kennedy from the Kennedy Law Firm. This is your chance during this hour. If you have one of those legal questions that you've been considering, you've been wondering where to go, where to turn, well, this is the hour. All you have to do is call the number that you see on your screen, 737-7587, when you have that question or even a comment. Kevin is the expert, been in the legal business for over 35 years. Of course, I know when you think about 35 years of experience and all that he knows, he brings that wealth of wisdom here and shares it with you when he's here on OpenLine. So we are welcoming Kevin once again. It's
so
always
good
to be
Kevin. With you, Chuck. As always, I said a little earlier, we look forward to getting to see each other when we do this show, and because it's fun to share. And if you know the answer, I never really was any good on the game shows. Now, my brother was excellent, but when it gets down to these legal problems, legal questions, I do feel pretty good about being able to share and give you some insight to help, because it will make a difference in your and your family's life. So here we are, November 2021, and I'm glad to be with you, Chuck.
Well, we're looking forward to Thanksgiving coming up next week. And a lot of times, too, as I say Thanksgiving, I think about families getting together and that sort of thing. But you do know a lot of times amongst families, you start having some of those interviews, some of those questions, some of those, well, who's getting what in the will and that kind of thing. It's a really, I would say, years of you and I doing this show, that's one of the main questions we get about wills, estate planning, those kinds of things.
Well, the truth is, everybody that has a family, and a family is a blessing, having children is a blessing, but the truth is, it only comes around on your mind when the family gets together. And if you're there with your family, if your mother and father, your grandparents don't have a will, be busy about it. Go get those things addressed. If they don't have a power of attorney, I want you to encourage them. The only thing that prevents people from it is a lack of trust. If we have trust among the family members, it will make a difference. The worst thing in the world is to be caught unprepared. So you will regret it. Your family will regret it. It will bring agony to you, and many times you'll say, I wish I had. So that's a great point to make right now. And so it's not a bad time to chit-chat, think about it, and get your affairs in order. We had someone there the other day, and their wife had a spending problem, and they said, well, what about a trust? And he was trying to say, how much money should I put in the trust? How much money should we pay out a month? It all makes sense. So what does it mean? You got to plan. If you fail to plan, then you're going to have disappointment and regret.
Absolutely. Now, if you've watched this show before, and I know a lot of you have, we have a lot of people who have called in a couple of times, maybe 3-4 times, with those legal questions over, this past year. You know that it always gets busy. So if you do have one of those questions or comments, make sure that you get on the line with us just as soon as possible. We are going to go right to the lines, right off the top of the show. Beth is on the line with us. Beth, welcome to OpenLine. Do you have a question for Kevin?
Hi, yes, I do. I was going to ask, if I am rear-ended in a parking lot, whose liability is that?
Okay, Beth, great question. Is it a little different? Standard of care in the parking lot, that's a privately owned area versus a public street. And we have those cases all the time. The truth is, if it's negligence in the right-of-way and you're there and somebody runs into the back of you, they're going to be liable. Is it always absolute? Let me say this as the lawyer. There is no such thing as absolute. Now, the law is absolute, but the skilled lawyer will interpret those circumstances. And remember, there's always, what would a reasonable person do under those circumstances? If you had to stop and someone else calls that, you divert the liability off the driver onto someone else. So one of the great things, thank you for the question, because we have lots and lots of lawsuits out of parking lots. There's a duty on the people that own the mall to keep the parking lots in good shape. If they have all these crevices and people fall, there's liability. There's an expectation that we're invitees. They welcome us in, and because they didn't maintain it, it's negligence. As a result of their negligence, we fell, we were injured, and we make a claim. There are harder cases. You have to prove that they knew it was a problem and that they didn't fix it. So a lot of tricks of the trade. I hope no one gets hurt, but realistically, before this year is over with, someone's going to get hurt in a car wreck on the public streets and in a parking lot. Thank you, Beth.
Follow-up question to that, Kevin.
Go.
If you do get rear-ended in the parking lot, is it a good idea to take your phone out and video?
Yes. We've got to document everything. And if there's a witness right there, y'all know that earlier this year I was involved in a car wreck, and the guy came up and he says, hey, he knew who I was, and he said, Mr. Kenny, I saw the whole thing. I said, stand right here. Don't leave me. I wasn't trying to boss him, but I knew how critical it was when the police, I said, just tell them what you saw. We just want to be honest, but if you don't take steps, then you leave it open for interpretation for the others. And there's unscrupulous people. They're going to say, oh no, Mr. Kennedy ran over me. Wow, and what about the two witnesses? Remember, we have the scales of justice. If there's two witnesses over here and you have one, there's a little more evidence going. And you say, well, that evidence is not credible. It all depends on which lawyer you get who can expose the credibility. So it'll make a difference. Remember, we can get affidavits, find out, did you see this? Did you see this? Can I get your name and number? A lot of tricks to the trade. A skilled lawyer will protect you.
All right, good to know. All right, let's go back to the lines right now. Ron is on the line with us right now. Good evening, Ron. What's your question for Kevin?
A lot of tricks to the trade.
Can you hear us, Ron?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay,
go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, the question is this. I had to move a mobile home. I was forced to because they sold the property, and the guy has the right to do so. The problem is the guy that moved it showed me a bogus license. He did not have the true license. And he moved the trailer, put it in the wrong spot, cost me thousands of dollars to fix it. If it wasn't for the church, I wouldn't even be in the trailer. Is that theft by deception?
Yes.
Or is that...
No.
To me, it's theft by deception. I was an auxiliary cop in New York.
Yeah.
But I tried to get the police to write something up, and they won't do it. The DA won't do anything in Clarksville or anything.
Okay, well, here's how I'll respond to that. Yes, I think that is theft by deception. Number two, there is a host of crimes that person could have committed. And y'all, what is the difference between a criminal charge and a civil liability? Many times the district attorney says, oh, that's too much complication because if we bring this, the defense lawyer is going to say this is all civil. He needs to sue him. It's a bunch of gray areas. Why is it that some DAs will take a case and they charge him and prosecute you? It's sometimes the different DAs. Sometimes you have to go talk to one and another one will tell you a different answer because it gets down to interpretation of the facts. So what I would try to do is I might even go back to the DA's office again and try to talk to them and see if you could persuade them that this was a con game from the very beginning.
All right, good to know. Thanks for the call, Ron. We appreciate it. Let's go right back to the lines right now. Steve is on the line with us. Steve, we're glad you're joining us here on Open Line. What's your question for Kevin?
All right, question is my mom had a will in between her and her sister and her mom and dad. She didn't show her the will to this day. It's been over 20 years, and she still hasn't showed the will or anything. So how long does she have to see that will, and can she do anything?
Okay, really, the will be effective as long until it's revoked. So if the will was revoked, then that's the end of it. People write multiple wills during their lifetime. If she is still alive, that will is good. If she passed away, that will would still be interpreted as good. So then we'd have to probate the will. What does that mean? You hire a lawyer, they go to a court, they file this with the court, and they say, here's my mother's will, this left all this property to me. I'd like to be appointed the executor, and I'd like to have that time. You send the notice to all the creditors. If anybody wants to make a claim, they've got to bring a claim or they're forever barred. We close the estate, we have a deed, and we can sell the property and do whatever needs to be done. So the question is there ever an expiration on a will? A properly done will, there's no expiration.
And Kevin, kind of another follow-up on that. Some people say, well, I'm just going to do a handwritten will. I don't need to go see the attorney to get my will as long as I have something, that says you get everything. So what's your advice? Visiting the lawyer for that? Or
there you go. There you go. And there's a lot of lawsuits. Well, do you really want to be involved in a lawsuit? Not really. So the best way is to execute it under Tennessee law. People say, well, I'm going to save $100, I'm going to save $150, but you create a lot of grief. So Kevin Kennedy always says, take a proactive approach. And if your parents, they wrote out, son, I'm an only child, I'm this, I'm that. Don't risk that, because we have caretakers that make claims. We have other individuals that come forward and make claims, and it's just a lot of expense that could be avoided if you took those steps. People call me and they say, Kevin, Daddy's just not ready to do it. And I said, well, you should bring him in and let us talk to him, because I want to make it clear the risk. So many people don't understand the risk, or they don't really care and they play it down. But once we explain it to them, they say, well, good gracious, I didn't know they could do that. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. So take a proactive approach, come see them, and you'll be glad you did. The whole family will sleep better. And guess what? No daddy wants to see his children sue each other. And no child ever wants to be drug into a lawsuit over a brother or a sister.
And that's one more reason that you visit the attorney. Well, we appreciate all the calls that are already coming in. If you do have one of those calls for Kevin here on Open Line, just make sure you get on the line with us, 737-7587. We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be back with more Open Line right after that.